Hey folks, thanks for visiting livemorenow.net. Today we're going to talk about how to keep our produce fresher longer, so stick around, I've got some pretty cool tips. Okay folks, so if you've been watching any of our videos, you know that we've recently started taking on a plant-based diet and we've started juicing. So we are going through gobs of produce every single day, and keeping it fresh as long as possible has become a real thing in our house because it's expensive. I recently read an article that the average family wastes about $96 a month on food, and I'm sure that could be true for us if we weren't careful. I'm not proud to admit that we really didn't eat much in the way of fresh fruits and veggies before some of these transformations we've taken on. So what little fresh fruit we did buy usually got forgotten about in the fruit bin. So anyways, I found some really cool tips I want to share with you on the most common items that we use. In my blog post on my website, I have a full PDF that shows how to keep fresh fruit and veggies fresher longer from A to Z. So you got a lot more choices to read about in that PDF, so be sure to check that out. So I'm going to start with apples. Bananas, apples, citrus fruit, and tomatoes all give off ethylene, so they should never be hanging out with other fruit. Otherwise, that gas they release will cause the other fruit or veggies to deteriorate faster. So for apples, what I've learned, the best way to keep them fresher as long as possible is just to keep them in a cardboard box in the fridge. So that's what we're gonna do. With a moist towel on top. So that's that. When it comes to berries and cherries, you never want to wash them beforehand, otherwise you'll promote mold, but you do want to keep them in an airtight container. So get them in that airtight container, put them in the fridge. Now these I happen to pull from our freezer just to show you, these were getting kind of old and we decided that rather than them go to waste, we would use them in our next smoothie. So I popped this container into the freezer to keep them good. Beets. We recently discovered golden beets, by the way. That's not necessarily relevant other than it is a beet. The first thing you want to do is cut off the greens. And you can use these greens. We've juiced the greens of beets before, but they are pretty bitter, so don't use too many at once, I would say. And these like to be kept real dry, so keep them in a airtight container with a paper towel in there to help absorb any moisture. And then you can get those in the fridge. So those are good. Carrots. You want to cut the tops off, and again, keep them in an airtight container. Again, you could juice these. I'm not going to juice that, but we've got plenty more where these came from, so I'll be filling up this container after the video. Celery. And I'm gonna just talk about all greens, the heavy greens, collard greens, kale, Swiss chard, whatever. You always wanna make sure you untie it, unbunch it. And what I've done here, just to show you for some of the celery that I already have in the kitchen, we cut it up a little bit so it fits in here nicely. Again, it's just gonna go in our juicer. And then again, keep a moist towel on top. I've found that this really, really works at keeping the produce crisp longer. So you'll definitely want to invest in some big containers. Plastic, there's some controversy about plastic and possibly being toxic, but glass is very expensive, so we're kind of just replacing our old plastic containers with glass as we need it. So that is, what is this stuff again? Collard greens. Paul just mouthed that to me. And cover this with a fresh moist towel again. Seal it up. And we can stack it. Now, as far as citrus goes, as I was saying, these give off ethylene as well, so they don't play well with other fruit, but they are best kept just kind of floating around in the drawer or in a container like they come in, where they can just breathe freely. And finally, tomatoes, they should always be left on the counter. These two give off that ethylene until they start to get a little bit ripe. At that point, you can put them in the fridge, but for the most part, keep them on the counter as long as possible and try to get them used up. So this is about what our fridge looks like when we first get home from the grocery store, along with all the stuff that I just showed you on the counter. Somehow has to get fit in here. So although some of these tips might seem pretty basic to most of you, getting it in here, getting it neatly organized, and making sure it gets used and rotated properly is of utmost concern to us. So I'm hoping that some of you will find some of these tips helpful and you'll be able to use them as you move forward. Don't forget to buy your produce locally if you can. Thank you so much for visiting livemorenow.net.